Consider the graph of y equals fx as shown, and you can see I have copied them perfectly, shown it right. Use your knowledge of transformations to sketch the graph of each of the following functions. So we're going to start with y, and we're going to do this one first. So I'm going to say y equals 3 times fx. Now, what we do remember is that y equals fx. So if I say 3fx, it means that all my y value is going to be 3 times bigger. So whatever this value is, it's going to be 3 times bigger, so it's going to be all the way up here somewhere. The only other thing that I can also know is when y is 0, 0 times 3 is 0, so it's going to go through there. Whatever the y value is here, it's going to be 3 times bigger, so it's going to be there. Y is 0 again, so it's going to be over there. If this is negative, let's say this is negative 1, then that value will be times 3, which means negative 3. So you can see what's going to happen here. If this value was, y value here is 1, it's going to be 3. And it's going to be up there. So my graph is going to look like this. It needs to go through that point. It needs to go through that point. That's the important bit. So it's stretched. And that is how it's going to look like. So it's stretched by a factor of 3 along the y-axis. So everything has been pulled out. For our next question, y equals fx plus 2. What happens now is y of x is moved. So all my x values, whatever my x values were, they will move up into the opposite direction of positive 2, which means they're going to go back minus 2. So this whole graph is going to move in this direction. So this will move there, that will move there, and all these values will just move up. That value will move up there. So all you're going to draw is going to be, it's going to look exactly the same as that. And everything have just moved. So if you have to say what happened, if you'll say there was a translation of factor negative 2 or x units to the left. I'm going to use 2 colors, so because 2 things are going to happen here. I'm going to first do the light one, and then the dark green will then be your final answer. 2 things happens here. Y equals, and I'm going to say minus f at 2x. Okay. You have to do one of them first. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say negative means that my y values are swapped. In other words, all your y values, because this is y, where y was positive here, it will become negative. So we can see that this is then mirrored, or it's reflected in the x-axis. So this thing is going to look like this. All these values change, so it's going to look like mirrored in the x values. Okay, so this is like a mirror, and it's mirrored in the x-axis. However, now these values, f times 2x, so all your x values becomes twice as big. In other words, if this x value here was, let's say, minus 4, this will become minus 8. So all of these things will move in this, will be stretched in this direction. However, x is 0 here, so it still need to go through this point. Okay, so it still needs to, sorry, it's not by a factor 2, it's going to be a factor of half. Remember, it's always the opposite, so it's a factor of half. So instead of being at 4, it's going to go now to negative 2. So all these x values is actually going to be a little bit smaller, so it's going to come in this direction. When it went through the 0 over here, it still need to go to 0 through there. If this was positive, if the x value was positive 1, it will be now a half. If this was 3, it will be 1. So my graph will be still going through there, but it will come into smaller values like that. And that will be y equals negative f at 2x. Our last example, y equals negative fx plus 3. Negative fx plus 3. So again, there's two things that happens. First, the y values are reflected, which means instead of looking like that, it's now reflected in the x-axis. It looks like that, but that's not our final one. Our final one is now plus 3. So all my y values, this is y, is added to 3. So whatever this is, this whole thing will move up. All of these will move up, and it will finish up. That point will be 3 up, this will be 3 up, this will be 3 up. So it's going to look like that. So that will be first mirrored in the x-axis, and then it will be translated 3 units up.